He wasn't supposed to be there, you know? Just a lone man in dusty fatigues, sitting under the scorched frame of an old bus stop on the edge of Sable Ridge, Arizona, a town so forgotten even the tumbleweeds seemed bored. No name, no ID, no water, just the kind of thousand-yard stare that makes folks cross the street without thinking twice. He didn't talk, didn't even flinch, just sat there, shoulders squared, boots planted, eyes always scanning, like maybe he was still behind enemy lines and this was just another kind of battlefield. So when the local cops sent out their K-9 unit, expecting some vagrant trouble, well, nobody could have guessed what was about to go down. The dog didn't bark, didn't lunge, didn't do any of those hard-charging police dog things. Nope. This German shepherd just walked right up, locked eyes with the stranger, and then, get this, laid its head gently in the man's lap, like it had been searching for him its whole life. That's the moment Sable Ridge became the setting for a story folks still whisper about, even now. Yeah, that happened. But let me back up a sec. That day started like any other in Sable Ridge. The sun barely peeking over the cracked earth, gas station shuttered years ago, diner open just for the regulars, everyone in town knowing each other's business, sometimes too well, if you ask me. So when some guy who looked like he crawled out of a Clint Eastwood flick appears, just sitting at the edge of town, folks start whispering, peering out their windows. Sarah Connolly, who owns the hardware store and has nerves of steel, lost a son and a husband, still opens up every morning. She was the first to notice. Said he sat too still, like a ghost haunting the heat. She called the sheriff's office, didn't even hesitate. Deputy Kyle Mercer showed up first, short fuse, shorter patience. Tried talking to the guy, got nothing but that calm, steady look in return. Just passing through, the stranger finally muttered. But that wasn't enough for Kyle, so he called in Lieutenant Ray Hollis, acting sheriff, a man whose hat was almost as big as his ego. Ray liked to remind everyone he'd served a year in the Guard and acted like he was the town's personal John Wayne. They frisked the stranger, found nothing but an old, battered notebook stuffed with coordinates and rough sketches. Just enough mystery to get everyone's hackles up. Now here's where things get interesting, real movie twist stuff. While Ray and Kyle are grilling this silent statue of a man, a little kid named Finn strolls over from the diner, lemonade in hand, big brown eyes wide open. He looks like the man in Grandpa's picture, the one with the dog, Finn says, before Ray shoos him off. But that gets a flicker out of the stranger, something deep shifts behind his eyes, like a memory sharp enough to hurt. Just then, the K-9 unit finally arrives, Officer Tanya Gleason, all business, and her German shepherd, Axel, a dog built for takedowns. Except Axel sees the stranger and boom, he freezes. Ears flat, tail still, then suddenly he's walking slow, almost careful, straight toward the man, and buries his face in the guy's chest. Whole town just stops breathing for a minute. I know this dog, the stranger finally says, voice rough from disuse. His name's Valor. Tanya's confused, starts scanning for a chip. Sure enough, VLR-29. Military designation. Presumed killed in action 5 years ago. That's when the pieces fall into place. Turns out our mystery man is Captain Jackson Reeves, U.S. Marine Recon. He and Valor were partners in Kandahar, bomb sniffers, front lines, the works. Everyone thought Valor was lost in a blast, but somehow, the dog ended up stateside. Got a new name, new handler, new everything. And now, here they are, reunited by pure chance on a bench in a dusty town nobody remembers. People started to gather, not out of nosiness, but because it was obvious something real was happening, something bigger than gossip. Sarah brought out water, Finn parked himself on the curb, eyes glued to the scene, and even Clary Henshaw, the crusty old Vietnam vet, hobbled over, muttering that dog remembers landmines. They don't train him like that anymore. You could almost feel the suspicion melting in the morning heat, replaced by something that felt a lot like respect. Jackson didn't gloat, didn't make speeches, just kept a hand on Valor's head, eyes soft for the first time in years, like the war had finally let him go. That's when things went from small-town weird to full-blown Hollywood. A Black Hawk helicopter thundered in overhead. Yeah, the feds. Turns out Jackson had been undercover, monitoring a suspected militia using the old freight lines. He wasn't supposed to make contact, but nobody planned for a lost dog blowing his cover. Maynard Cross, some federal liaison slicker than an oil spill, showed up with paperwork and a practiced frown. Mission's compromised. The dog technically belongs to the government, he declared. But Jackson just looked down at Valor and said, he died, and so did I, the day I lost him. The town stood behind him, no hesitation. Clary was the first to bark back that dogs earned a peaceful end, not more orders. Tanya backed him up, admitting Valor hadn't been himself. Turns out it wasn't hesitation, just old memories, deep as scars. The Black Hawk landed behind the hardware store, dust swirling like some biblical scene, and Jackson clipped Valor's patch, VLR-29, back onto his collar, quiet ceremony in the shade. Sarah handed over a towel, the marshal brought a sandwich, and you could feel the weight of years lifting from Jackson's shoulders. But just when you thought the credits were about to roll, here comes Eli, town conspiracy theorist, eyes wild, waving a phone. It's online, he shouts. Finn, that little spark plug, had filmed the whole reunion and put it up on the internet. Next thing you know, the story's gone viral. People from all over are crying, saluting, offering to adopt Valor, raising money for veterans, calling him the Desert Guardian. Maynard shook his head, grumbling, this complicates things. But Jackson, he just shrugged. No, it simplifies them. And for once, the town nodded in agreement. They weren't just bystanders now, they were witnesses. When the chopper finally lifted, sand kicking in every direction, Jackson stood tall, not some lost ghost anymore, but a soldier finally heading home, Valor at his side, both of them silent. Both of them finally at peace. A week later, Sarah put up a plaque right next to that old bench, words carved deep. To those who serve and those who wait, seen or unseen, welcome home. And if you ask anybody in Sable Ridge what happened that day, they won't talk about helicopters or federal agents or whatever orders were given. They'll tell you about a dog who remembered his partner and a man who finally found his way home, right where he was meant to be. So let me ask you this, should Valor have gone back into service, or had he already done enough? Is a bond like that something a government can own? Or is it something sacred, untouchable? Drop your thoughts below. Let's hear what you've got to say about justice, loyalty, and the lines we draw in the sand. If this story struck a chord or reminded you of something worth holding on to, hit subscribe, because out here, the best stories don't come from the headlines, they come from reunions we thought we'd never see. You ever think a story ends just because the dust settles and the crowd goes home? Yeah, I used to believe that too, but Sable Ridge had other plans for us, me, Jackson Reeves, and that dog folks now call the Desert Guardian. See, after the chopper lifted off and the news vans finally rolled out of town, you'd think things would go back to the way they'd always been. Small town, same faces, nothing but the sun and the wind for company. Only that wasn't how it played out. Not even close. First off, Valor didn't sleep for days, kept pacing from window to window like he was waiting for the next call, the next order, the next bomb under the sand. I was the same, honestly. Even with that plaque gleaming on the bench out front, I couldn't shake the feeling I was still being watched. By feds, sure, but also by the people who suddenly expected something from me. Word had gotten out, maybe too far out. Vets I'd never met started showing up at the hardware store. Some just wanted to shake my hand. Some brought stories of dogs they'd lost overseas, and a few, well, they came looking for trouble. Let me tell you about the first night it really hit me that this wasn't just my story anymore. There was this knock at Sarah's door, late, almost midnight. She opened it to find a teenage girl, hair in braids, holding a folded flag so tight her knuckles were white. Her name was Lila. Said she'd hitched all the way from Yuma because her brother served with me in Kandahar, claimed Valor once dragged him out from under a Flittumby. She'd watched the reunion video 100 times and needed to see for herself if Valor remembered her scent. I told her I didn't know what to expect, but Valor, old bones and all, went straight to her, pressed his nose against that flag, and let out the softest whine you've ever heard, like he was grieving right there with her. That's when it clicked for me. This wasn't just about one man and his dog anymore. Sable Ridge was becoming a beacon, whether we wanted it or not. The second act, though, that's when the heat really turned up. Couple days later, 2 black SUVs rolled into town. No plates, government issued down to the last bolt. Out stepped Maynard Cross again, but this time, he wasn't alone. With him was Major Dana Rivers, stiff uniform, steely eyes, clipboard thicker than a Bible. They weren't here to say thank you. They wanted Valor back. The Army needs him for a new behavioral study, cutting-edge PTSD work, they said, but I could hear it in their voices. They saw valor as property, not family. Let me pause right there, because what happened next, even I couldn't have predicted. Sarah, who never liked to fight, suddenly called a town meeting right in the diner. Folks squeezed in, shoulder to shoulder. Clary, Lila, even little Finn, who refused to let go of Valor's leash. Major Rivers made her pitch, legal jargon flying, but every time she tried to talk protocol, someone spoke up about what Valor meant to them. Clary talked about the Vietnam boys who never came home, Sarah about her son who'd sent letters about the bravest dog in Afghanistan, and Lila, tears streaming, told everyone how Valor gave her brother hope on his darkest days. You could feel the tide turning. Even the air conditioner in that diner couldn't cool things down. Then came the twist nobody expected. Tanya, the canine officer, stood up and handed over Valor's chip log. Turns out, after the viral day, she petitioned to have Valor officially retired, transferred to civilian life. She'd kept it quiet, afraid of backlash, but the paperwork was done, legal and binding. Major Rivers looked like she'd swallowed a hornet. Maynard Cross just sighed and said, "Sometimes the story's bigger than the rules." And just like that, Valor was home, for good. The diner erupted, applause, laughter, even a few prayers said out loud. Yeah, that happened. By sundown, the whole town was on Main Street, music playing, lights strung from the hardware store to the diner, Lila dancing with Finn, Clary teaching Valor how to sit pretty for scraps. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. Not because the war was over, because it never really is, but because, just this once, we'd drawn the line and said, no more taking what can't be replaced. Now, you tell me, was it right for a town like Sable Ridge to stand up to the government for a dog and a broken-down vet? Or did we just let sentiment get in the way of the greater good? Does loyalty trump protocol? Or do some bonds deserve to be protected no matter the cost? Drop your thoughts down below. And if you believe in stories that refuse to die quietly, hit that subscribe button. Out here, in towns the world forgets, the fights that matter most aren't just about law or order. They're about who we become when the cameras turn off and only our neighbors are left to judge us.